never comprised more than 25 people. But as all of you know, it was able to terrorize German people for more than a quarter of a century. The second main driver, along with that core group in Waziristan, and that driver of jihadism is the regional groups, all those regional groups operating in a range of countries, especially Yemen, Somalia, Maghreb states of Morocco, and Algeria. And this core movement seems to be in touch with them, assists them. Yemen, as you probably know, is one of the most dangerous and most troubling and disturbing kind of country at the present time that we know. The Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, you remember, it is the one that claimed that responsibility for the underwear bomber. And it is approximately, there are 300 jihadists in Somalia. The third layer, if we want to look at the jihadists, and that is probably the most disturbing, that is most difficult to pinpoint, most difficult to analyze, and as is the grassroots movement, comprising thousands of Muslims all over the world, inspired by Al-Qaeda and the regional franchises, but having little or no connection with the other groups. At times there might be some connection, but those are the people that at the present time are causing a great deal of difficulty. For the U.S., I think last year's events have raised doubts about our being under the impression that there may be no threat from homegrown groups in the United States. And very briefly, you know all that, but let me refresh your memory. Major Nidal Hassan, and he'll go on trial for his murderous rampage at Fort Hood Army Base in Texas. And you remember he was inspired by that Islamist preacher who presently sits in Yemen. Right here at home in Denver, the Afghan-born U.S. resident Najibullah Zazi. And you remember the whole thing, in a car going to New York with his father, other people in New York, and allegedly plotting those attacks in New York. David Hudley, and along with David Hudley, Rana. These are the Chicago people who have been recently caught, and they are charged with aiding the 2008 plot in Mumbai, India. You remember that hundreds of people were killed in that attack. And then those young men from Minnesota who went to fight with Al-Shabaab, the terrorist group in Somalia. And finally, these 5 young people, you recall, from close to Washington, D.C., and they were the ones who traveled to Pakistan, caught there. And then I heard one of them when he said, look, we are not terrorists, we are jihadists. Jihadists are not terrorists. We are fighting for Islam. We are fighting for the cause of Muslims. All that we are going to do is go to Afghanistan and fight the West, especially the United States. And so I think the point simply is that even today, even in this country, we do have those pockets, and we need to be vigilant. Let's look at Afghanistan, what's happening there. 25,000 to 30,000 active Taliban fighters in Afghanistan. Secretary Gates did say that Al-Qaeda is trying very, very hard to destabilize that region. We have been hearing, we have been seeing, watching, reading that Taliban in Afghanistan, Taliban in Pakistan, they are working together. Pakistani military goes after the Pakistani Taliban, but does not want to touch Afghanistan Taliban. In Afghanistan, as the United States is going to send more forces, Pakistanis are afraid that the Afghani Taliban will move to Pakistan and work with Pakistani Taliban much more actively than before. There is an effort today in Afghanistan that the government might want to work, have reconciliation with those Taliban who would defect and come to the government. There have been efforts in the past in order to placate them, give them security, give them education, give them all kind of assurances, social, cultural, economic needs to be met, but it has not worked so far. And if the aim is of the Taliban there, because they are now working Taliban Afghanistan, Taliban Pakistan, Al-Qaeda, Lashkar-e-Taiba, this is the terrorist group in Pakistan, and all of them are working together and are trying to provoke a war between India and Pakistan. And the thought is that if India and Pakistan go to war, and Pakistan has got all that nuclear arsenal, that might then help the terrorists and Al-Qaeda to have its own goal achieved, and that goal is to see that the West is weakened, that the sad part is that a distorted religious obsession that Christians, Jews, Hindus, they ought to be killed, and that a caliphate, Islamic caliphate again, to be the dominant force in the world. I will not go into more details. I look at the watch, and I think I'm going to say a couple more things about the facts, and then simply want to ask ourselves, what do we do? Where do we go? What needs to be done? Because these facts, all of us know, they are clear. The U.S. is sending more troops. It's pressuring Karzai government to get some credibility with the people in Afghanistan, to make sure that they have at least curbed corruption, working with those warlords, violating human rights of the people, drugs, that at least there is some effort in order to see that the Afghani government has the hearts and minds of people with them. Because without that, only military force on the part of the United States alone cannot do. General McChrystal, our own brave Marines, and all our troops who are losing their lives, along with the civilians, and not only the United States forces, but Canada, France, England, all these European countries, they may not have provided as much help as we wanted them to do. But in any event, the point simply is that unless Karzai government has some credibility, all this is going to waste in most instances. On January 28, there will be a London conference of donors to help the Afghani government. You've been watching that Karzai has brought twice his cabinet, nominated cabinet, and Parliament has struck down more than half each time. President Obama today is saying that even if he does not want to talk about the war on terror or war on terrorism, he has said a few times, we are at war. And like it or not, we are at war with Al-Qaeda and its ilk. And you might think about terrorism simply a tactic and not an enemy. But the point simply is that Al-Qaeda is an enemy. People along with Al-Qaeda who are working with them, that syndicate is at the present time a great deal of danger, not simply to the United States, not simply to the West, but to humanity. I think I'm going to simply leave it here at the present time. You also know that in Washington there is a great deal of effort in order to see that we have an integrated policy to fight terrorism.